Okay, so believe it or not, we've kind of talked about all of the major aspects of HTML. We've gone through text formatting, basic page setup. We've talked about media, like images and audio and video, right? We did forms, that's kind of a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna, there's a couple more, there's some smaller HTML tags that you can learn, but they're not really, they're kind of specific and they don't come up that often. I've taught you guys kind of the main stuff. And if you ever want to learn more, you can always go look at W3 Schools or, other sources to kind of look at the various HTML tags and the attributes they take and things like that. The final thing we're going to talk about when it comes to HTML, this is not specific to HTML or this course. This is kind of a general thing, but it's this idea of file management, okay? File management is one of these topics, like, it's not a fun topic, but it's a necessary topic to talk about so that you understand how things work, okay? Because when you write code, part of writing code is understanding how computers think about things, okay? So this next section will discuss file management and how it relates to specifically web development, okay? So you might remember about, 2 modules ago, actually maybe even last module, I talked about the idea that if you wanted to add a photograph or photo, right, you'd have like a photo, like a JPEG or a PNG. I talked about the idea that you had to have the photo, the image, and the HTML file in the same folder, right? And I said if you didn't do that, you were going to run into problems. And I didn't really expand on that. Well, now I'm going to finally expand on it, okay? So once again, I'm going to talk about file management. It's not specific to HTML. It's not specific to this class. It's just a general thing that computers do when they manage their files, okay? So computers are like a giant filing cabinet, okay? If you've ever seen like a filing cabinet, just like one big filing cabinet, and then it breaks down into smaller drawers, right? And in those drawers are like manila folders, which hold even more specific information. And then sometimes you can have a manila folder that's so big it has other manila folders in it. That is how files work on a computer, okay? So all files, there is a folder on your computer that holds all of the other files in your computer, okay? This folder is what's called the root folder. All right, so there's this idea that like I have a folder. I just switched to a different slide. Sorry if that's confusing. And a folder can have files inside of it. This is a file. This file could be an HTML file, it could be a JPEG, it could be an MP3 file, it could be a doc, it could be really kind of any file. I also have folders. So this is a folder. So if you have a folder inside of another folder, this is called a subfolder. So in this case, these are subfiles, these are subfolders. This folder can have files inside of it. So I can have a subfile inside of this subfolder, and similar to over here, okay? How this relates is your computer has what's called a root folder. A root folder is the main folder that everything is inside of. It's called a root because think of it like an upside down tree. Here's a tree, and the idea is like the tree has a root or its base, and then the branches come out, and those branches can have branches from it. So the idea with a file tree is that there's a main folder that has subfolders. Those subfolders can have subfolders, and it basically branches out, okay? So the idea would be I could have a folder here that has a subfolder or subfolders, and those break out into even more subfiles, and it basically kind of resembles an upside down tree. Okay, so let's talk about just understanding the file management. So what I'm going to do is I want you guys in the files to go to part 2 where it says file management, and I want you to go to where it says map file structure. And what I want you to do is look at root 1. Okay, and if your computer has column mode, this is a great use of column mode. And what I'm going to do is, like, root 1 is my root folder for, in this particular case. So I'm just going to draw that out. Let me start again. So I'm going to say it's called root 1. That's this main folder. And it has a subfolder. Inside that folder are 4 things. It has 2 files. Actually, I take that back. There's 3 files. Oops. There's dog.jpg. There's file 1.html. There's file 2.html. And there's a subfolder called images. Okay. If I go inside images, there are subfiles inside of that. Apple.jpg, banana.jpg, orange.jpg, and pineapple.jpg. So I'm going to break that down. Here's apple, banana, orange, and pineapple. Okay. So in this case, this is my root folder, or the folder that everything is inside of. It's the root of the tree. This is a subfolder. If there was another folder inside of this, that would be an additional subfolder. And in terms of levels, we would call this level 1. Let me get a different color here. This would be level 1. This would be level 2. If I had another, let's for instance say there was a subfolder here. Let's say that Apple was actually a folder instead of a file, and it had files inside of it. Then that would be level 3. Okay, so on and so on. Okay, so here's what I want you guys to do. Grab a piece of paper, like just some regular paper and a pencil, and what I want you to do is spend a moment, and I want you to draw out each one of these root folders. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. So I want you to draw each one out, just like I did for this one. So once again, it helps if you put this in column mode. So, you know, draw out this folder, draw out this, go to every subfolder, make sure that you're, you know, drawing everything correctly. Okay. Draw it out so that you have a file structure that's kind of similar to the one that I drew out. Okay. You can use this as an example if it helps you out. Do that. And then what we're going to do is in the next video, we're going to discuss how this file management relates to web development. Okay.